Catherine Martin awoke before her alarm clock's 5:30 chime. The affluent McAllister Groveland district in suburban St. Paul was still wrapped in silence. Through her bedroom window, Victorian mansions lined up neatly, beginning to emerge in the dim light. The May morning, heralding the end of spring, was still chilly, with a thin frost coating the window panes. She remembered moving into this house 10 years ago. The joy of acquiring what was considered the finest property in the area, together with her husband David, then a rising executive at First Minnesota Bank, and their young daughter Lily, remained vivid in her memory. Slipping out of bed, Catherine quietly peeked into 8-year-old Lily's room next door. The St. Mary's school uniform hung on a hanger, textbooks neatly arranged on the desk. She smiled at her daughter's peaceful sleeping face. "She's grown into such a good child," she thought as she descended the stairs. As usual, she switched on the coffee maker and began preparing breakfast. The rich aroma of caribou coffee beans began wafting through the spacious kitchen. The modern, predominantly white kitchen was Catherine's pride. On weekends, she would shop at Kowalski's markets, keeping the refrigerator consistently stocked with fresh ingredients. "A perfect day starts with a perfect breakfast," Catherine whispered softly as she whisked organic eggs and toasted whole grain bread. Her efficiency was a source of pride, much like her decade-long career at the major accounting firm Stevenson & Partners. Balancing work and family wasn't easy, but she believed that with proper routines, anything was manageable. At 6:45, footsteps could be heard descending the stairs. The antique grandfather clock in the entrance hall quietly marked time. "Good morning, honey." David appeared, dressed as always in his navy suit, befitting his position as branch manager at First Minnesota Bank. His Windsor-knotted tie was Catherine's Christmas gift from last year. "How's today looking?" "Busy again?" Catherine asked, to which David replied while glancing at the newspaper, "Yes, we have a new investment proposal review. Might be late tonight." There was an uneasiness in his voice. An expression she'd been seeing more often lately. Just then, an energetic voice echoed from upstairs. "Mom, Dad, good morning." Lily bounded down the stairs, her St. Mary's navy jumper skirt bouncing with each step. "Lily, no running." The mother's warning couldn't dampen her daughter's bright morning entrance. The family's conversation around the breakfast table was typically light-hearted. Lily talked about yesterday's math test, David about his bank colleagues, and Catherine about weekend events at the Catholic Church of St. Cecilia. They planned weekend walks in Como Park and reminisced about memories from the Minnesota State Fair. On the surface, nothing seemed different. However, lately, something had definitely changed. Her husband's late-night phone calls. The sound of hushed conversations with someone. Unusual fluctuations in their bank account balance. And above all, her daughter's worried expressions. Though Catherine sensed these irregularities, she didn't voice her concerns. Surely, it must be work stress. She tried to convince herself of this. That morning too, the breakfast scene appeared normal. Only her husband's behavior was slightly different. David left his meal unfinished and stood up before even emptying half his coffee cup. "I'm heading out early today," he said, hastily putting on his jacket. He added, "But I'll be home early tonight." He smiled gently at Catherine and Lily. At 4:30 p.m., Catherine arrived at the after-school care center. Though daylight still lingered, the air was gradually growing cooler. The street trees' dense green foliage marked the transition from spring to summer. The center, located on St. Mary's School grounds, was housed in a red brick building that spoke to the area's history. The entrance displayed "After School Club" alongside the school motto, "Faith, Knowledge, and Service." Entering the classroom, she found her daughter concentrated on math workbook exercises. Her friend Amy sat nearby. The two regularly spent their after-school homework time together. On the desk lay the remains of their snack, an apple and empty milk container. Lily ran over joyfully. Her navy jumper skirt was still as neat as in the morning, though her white socks had slipped down slightly. In her backpack, she carefully stored an art project she had completed that day. "Look, I made a present for Dad," Lily exclaimed. A photo frame made of colorful origami paper. "Dear Papa" was written carefully on it. Small stars decorated the frame, reflecting Lily's characteristic cuteness. When Catherine greeted the teacher, Jane smiled kindly. "Lily is such a good child. She finished all her homework today too." On their way to the parking lot, Lily cheerfully talked about her day at school, how the bean sprout she was observing in science class had grown, and how she played jump rope with Amy during recess. These moments were wrapped in the simple happiness of daily life. Mother and daughter got into the car. Catherine's work briefcase sat in the passenger seat, with Lily in the back. The sound of seatbelts clicking echoed in the car. They set off on their usual route home toward the McAllister-Groveland district. "Mom, Dad's been acting strange lately," Lily suddenly said. Catherine's hands tightened on the steering wheel. She glanced at her daughter's reflection in the rearview mirror. "How so?" "He talks to someone in the middle of the night. Yesterday, I heard him say, 'I can't wait any longer.' And then..." Lily hesitated. "And then... I found lots of papers I'd never seen before in Dad's desk. With lots of numbers written on them." Catherine felt her chest tighten. Indeed, her husband's recent behavior had been unusual. The late-night calls. The strange account movements. And this morning's hurried departure. Everything seemed to suggest something. Just as they were about to enter their residential area, a sudden siren pierced the quiet evening streets. The harsh sound reverberated off the walls of the elegant mansions, growing louder. In the rearview mirror, police car lights flashed blue and red. And there wasn't just one. Multiple police vehicles approached, surrounding her car as if planned. What could this be? As Catherine's face showed confusion, the police radio came through clearly. "Suspect vehicle confirmed, establish containment." "Repeat." "Suspect vehicle confirmed, establish containment." Her heart began racing. She couldn't understand what was happening. Then, a megaphone voice shook the evening air. "Black Volvo, pull over to the shoulder immediately." Catherine followed the instruction, slowly bringing the car to a stop. Street trees cast long shadows on the car. Lily's frightened voice trembled. "Mom. I'm scared. Why are the police?" "It's all right, Lily. This must be some mistake." Though she said this, Catherine's hands were shaking. Her fingers gripping the steering wheel had turned white. All the police officers who stepped out of their cars had their guns drawn. It was a scene she had only ever seen on television. Exit the vehicle. Slowly, with your hands up. The megaphone voice rang out again. Catherine took a deep breath and turned to her daughter. Lily's face was pale, her small body trembling. Lily, it's okay. Mom will protect you. She unfastened her seatbelt and moved to the back seat to embrace her daughter. Lily's body carried the scent of school lunch and crayons. Slowly opening the door, the cold air of late spring rushed into the car. She raised her hands as instructed. She could see her shadow stretching unusually long on the asphalt. Police officers approached, guns still drawn. One of them asked in a cold voice, "Do you know the whereabouts of David Martin?" At that moment, Lily's trembling intensified, and she whispered in her mother's arms. "Dad. Dad. Lily. What is it?" Tears welled up in her daughter's eyes as she continued with a trembling voice. "Dad said yesterday. I'm going to end it all," and then he was putting something in a big bag. In Catherine's mind, all the dots began connecting. Her husband's abnormal behavior. The late-night calls. And this morning's final smile. Everything seemed to have been prepared for this moment. The perfect family routine she thought she had seemed to crumble silently like a glass castle. The police officers guided mother and daughter to separate patrol cars. Lily clung to her mother, refusing to be separated. "Mom. I don't want to leave you." "It's okay, I'll be right beside you," Catherine tried to reassure her daughter with a trembling voice. As police sirens wailed, the trembling figures of mother and daughter stood illuminated in the twilight residential street. The interrogation room at St. Paul Police Western District was filled with the sterile light of fluorescent bulbs. Catherine sat in a hard chair, trying to comprehend the detective's words. The peaceful daily life from just an hour and a half ago felt like a distant past. The detective quietly began while looking at documents on the desk. A middle-aged man in a gray suit, his badge read, "Detective Thomas Wilson. Your husband, David Martin, is involved in fraudulent loans amounting to approximately $5 million. Those words made the interrogation room's air heavy. Catherine couldn't believe her ears. Fraudulent loans? It was discovered during First Minnesota Bank's internal investigation. He created multiple fictitious investment projects and misappropriated customer deposits without authorization. Detective Wilson flipped through the documents one by one. There were many familiar signatures lined up. All were David's. What's more serious is that this fraud wasn't committed alone. The detective pulled out a new document. A photograph was attached. "Do you know this woman?" The photo showed a young woman in her mid-20s, wearing a First Minnesota Bank uniform. "I might have seen her at bank training sessions. Jennifer Walker. She's been in an intimate relationship with your husband for the past 2 years." Catherine's vision blurred for a moment. 2 years ago. That was right after David had been promoted to branch manager. An affair. Her own voice sounded like someone else's. She's also an accomplice in the fraudulent loans. Customer information leaks, document forgery, fund transfers. She was involved in everything. Detective Wilson continued flipping through documents. However, Walker has been cooperating with us since yesterday. One reason appears to be that your husband was involved with other women besides her. The cold air of the interrogation room constricted Catherine's lungs. A peaceful home. An ideal husband. Everything was crumbling like a castle made of sand. Your daughter's testimony has also provided important clues. Detective Wilson softened his tone slightly. Where is Lily? Maternal instinct suddenly welled up. She's in the next room, talking with a child psychologist. Don't worry. The detective smiled gently. According to her, your husband has been making frequent phone calls late at night recently. Catherine nodded. Lily's worried expression flashed through her mind. She said he often said, "I can't wait any longer," in the middle of the night. Yes. In fact, David Martin had been rushing to move funds over the past few weeks. We believe he was planning to flee the country. Just then, there was a knock at the door. A young detective entered with documents. Report, sir. The suspect's credit card history shows he purchased airline tickets to Mexico. Detective Wilson continued while reviewing the documents. As of yesterday, approximately $3 million had been transferred to an account in the Cayman Islands. The remaining $2 million is currently under investigation. Catherine couldn't stop her hands from shaking. Daily work, housework, childcare. The life she had desperately built up was silently crumbling due to her husband's betrayal. Just as everything seemed to be going dark, the door opened again and Lily burst in, followed by a kind-looking female counselor. Catherine held her daughter tightly as she ran over. The small body was trembling. "I'm sorry about Dad." Lily's voice was wet with tears. "I saw the papers in Dad's desk. There were lots of numbers and names I didn't know." "Lily, you've done nothing wrong," Catherine said while stroking her daughter's back. At that moment, commotion could be heard from the hallway. The door opened, and a young detective hurriedly reported. "We found the suspect's vehicle near the airport." Detective Wilson quickly stood up. "Ma'am, could we have a bit more of your time? There are still things we need to confirm." The departure lobby of Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport was crowded with travelers waiting for evening flights. In the Airport Security Command Center, Detective Wilson was conducting final checks of the operation. Wall-mounted monitors displayed surveillance camera footage from various parts of the airport. It was past 8 p.m., and the spring night was growing darker. Suspect David Martin is scheduled for flight AM 2751 to Mexico City. Boarding begins in 40 minutes, a young officer reported, tension evident in his voice. Just then, the command center door opened. Jennifer, brought from the holding room, appeared with a tired expression. Her first Minnesota bank uniform was wrinkled, her makeup smeared. "I just received a call from Martin," she began with a trembling voice. "He apologized for deceiving me, and said this would be his last call." "What exactly did he say?" Detective Wilson leaned forward. "He said he had arranged to meet another woman in Buenos Aires. It wasn't just me. It was all an act for the money." At that moment, the surveillance camera footage switched. A familiar figure appeared near the check-in counter in the departure lobby. Navy suit with a black carry-on case. Without doubt, it was David Martin. Just then, Catherine's mobile phone rang. A call from an unknown number. In the police station interrogation room, she held her breath. "You can answer it," Detective Wilson nodded. "Hello. Catherine." A familiar voice. But different from her husband's usually gentle tone. "Is Lily there?" "Yes, she's sleeping next door." Catherine answered while watching her daughter's sleeping face. Lily had fallen asleep exhausted on the sofa in the police station's reception room. "I see, that's good." David's voice trembled. "I ruined everything. I can't ask for forgiveness, but..." "Why?" Catherine's voice was surprisingly calm. "We're 10 years of marriage and your promises to Lily all lies." A long silence followed on the other end of the phone. "Not at first." David's voice grew hoarse. "After becoming branch manager, I felt the pressure. It started with small frauds. But once I started..." "And Jennifer?" "The other women? I met her through a client introduction. I thought using her would make it easier to move funds." David's voice broke off. "But in the end, I was the one being used. They had other men too." At that moment, the airport surveillance cameras caught David's movement. He was moving away from the check-in counter, heading toward an emergency exit. Detective Wilson's voice echoed through the airport. "Stop right there." David stopped, still holding the phone. Surrounding passengers scattered with screams. "Catherine, one last thing. The bank account password is Lily's birthday and the date of our first kiss. The remaining funds there, at least for Lily's education." Police officers with drawn guns gradually tightened their containment. "Catherine, please, take care of Lily." The phone call ended. The next moment, security cameras captured the decisive moment. David Martin slowly raised both hands. His carry-on case fell to the floor with a thud. Bundles of cash spilled out. Hours later, at the St. Paul Police Department press conference room, Detective Wilson was explaining the case outline amidst a storm of camera flashes. In the reception room, Catherine held Lily close. Outside the window, the dawn sky was gradually brightening. The story of their broken family had reached its end. However, the new story of mother and daughter was about to begin. As they were leaving the police station, Margaret Smith was waiting for them. "Come stay with me. You're not alone." Catherine shed tears at her kind words. The warmth of the community would help ease the difficult days ahead. The next morning's newspapers covered the incident extensively. However, Catherine didn't see those headlines. That morning, she was meeting with a lawyer to begin divorce proceedings. And searching for a new school for Lily. On a night when they seemed to have lost everything, the bond between mother and daughter had grown stronger. The spring sunlight announced the beginning of a new day. 1 year later, a new morning began in the city of Duluth, about 2 hours north of St. Paul by car. A fresh breeze from Lake Superior rustled the maple trees lining the street. "Lily, hurry up." Catherine's voice rang out from a modest house. White walls with green window frames, tulips blooming in the small front yard. It had been half a year since they moved into this house. Coming. 9-year-old Lily came running down the stairs. Instead of St. Mary's navy jumper skirt, she wore the light blue blazer of Duluth Lakeview Elementary School. Did you finish all your homework? Yes. I finished it at the library with Anna yesterday. Catherine smiled. Anna was a neighborhood girl they met right after moving. The two quickly became best friends. Lily had adapted to the new environment much faster than expected. On the breakfast table, dishes were set for two as usual. Oatmeal and fruit, and Catherine's beloved caribou coffee. The days of setting the table for three felt like a distant past. Hey Mom, Lily began quietly while stirring her oatmeal. Can I go see Dad next week? Catherine's hand paused for a moment. David had received a 10-year prison sentence for fraudulent loans and embezzlement. Father-daughter visits at Stillwater Prison were permitted only once every 2 months. Of course. But there's something I want to talk about first. Catherine looked straight into her daughter's eyes. The trials for Dad and Jennifer are all finished, and the compensation payments have been decided. All the Martin family assets would be seized as compensation to First Minnesota Bank. The house in St. Paul, David's retirement funds, everything was lost. However, Catherine had fought desperately to protect her daughter's education fund. But Lily's college fund is safe. Mom will definitely. I know, Lily interrupted her mother's words. I see you working late every night. Catherine felt her throat tighten. Since transferring to Stevenson and Partners Duluth branch, she had been working desperately. In addition to her day job, she also did accounting consulting work from home at night. Lily always greeted her exhausted mother with a warm smile when she returned home. And, Catherine brought up a new topic. Aunt Margaret is coming to visit next weekend. Lily's face brightened. Margaret Smith had supported them continuously since the incident. Using her experience as a former counselor, she provided emotional support and helped with everything from arranging the move to introducing the new school. Yay! Aunt Margaret can meet my new friends. Just then, the doorbell rang. Good morning. With a cheerful voice, their neighbor Sarah Johnson peeked in. She drove Lily to school every morning. Sarah, thank you so much. Don't mention it. My daughter Amy seems happier with Lily around too. The new community was warmer than expected. The people of Duluth accepted Catherine and Lily without prying into their past. Mom, I'm going now. Lily stood up. Catherine hugged her daughter tightly. Take care. Have a wonderful day. The sky visible through the window was crystal clear blue. Beyond Lake Superior, the morning sun was rising to herald a new season. At 9 a.m., Catherine headed to her branch office. New project documents were piled on her desk. There had even been talk of promotion. The year of desperate work was slowly bearing fruit. During lunch break, she met with her colleague Jane at the nearby cafeteria. Catherine, about that matter, Jane began while picking at her organic salad. Have you thought about the teaching position at Duluth Community College? If it's evening part-time, you could balance it with your current job. a teaching position utilizing her accounting experience. New possibilities were gradually expanding. At 3 p.m., her mobile phone rang. She tensed for a moment at the unknown number, but it was her lawyer. "Mrs. Martin, the settlement payment from David has been completed. The compensation from Jennifer Walker will also be transferred next week." In the evening, after finishing work, Catherine stopped by the lakeside park. Sitting on a bench, she gazed at the peaceful sunset. A year ago on that day, she thought she had lost everything. But the truly important things remained with her. "Mom!" Lily waved from across the park. Her daughter's smile getting out of Sarah's car shone in the sunset. "Hey Mom, guess what? The teacher praised me today," Lily said excitedly, showing her writing assignment. The theme was, "My treasure." It read, "My treasure is my mom's smile. Even when things are hard, Mom keeps moving forward, she's my hero. I want to keep making new memories with Mom." Catherine held her daughter tightly. The spring breeze gently caressed their hair. Here in this city, their new life had truly begun.